Am I audible?
Yes, you are, Sakshi. I can hear you.
Okay. Good morning, sir, and good afternoon for you, I guess.
That's
And
right.
congratulations on the third anniversary of Indian Noir.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
We'll start in a short while, like
Sure.
2 minutes. Yeah. The stars will never align, and the traffic lights of life will never all be green at the same time. The universe does not conspire against you, but it does not go out of its way to line up the pins either. Conditions are never perfect. Someday is a disease that will take your dreams to the grave with you. Pro and con lists are just as bad. If it's important to you and you want to do it eventually, just do it and correct the course along the way. Good morning to one and all present here. I, Sakshi Patel, chairperson of site IEEE GSET SB, welcome you all to our last session of Colloquio 2021. Before we begin with our session, I would like to inform you, sir, that the session is live on YouTube. In case the participants have any questions during the session, just go ahead and type them in the chat box. All questions will be answered once Sir has concluded the session. Podcasting has become popular as it allows listeners to time shift content. That is, to listen when it suits them. Podcast might be a new term in India, but it is not too different from listening to stories from our grandparents. Storytelling is something that is rooted in our culture. Hence, Women in Engineering Affinity Group, SITE, and IAS PES Joint Chapter of IEEE GSET SB presents Colloquio 2021, providing an opportunity to wander beyond conventionality. Indian Law is critically acclaimed, chart-topping podcast featuring thrilling crime and horror audio stories set in India, featuring Indian characters Nikesh Murali, a professional voice actor and an Amazon best-selling Commonwealth Short Story Prize and DWL Story Prize winning writer, is the voice of the podcast. IEEE GSET SB is honored to have Mr. Nikesh Murali as the keynote speaker of Colloquio 2021 and also again congratulating for the third anniversary of Indian Law. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sakshi, for that very kind introduction. And bear with me as I try to bring up the presentation. Can everyone see the presentation now?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
All right. So let me see. Just give me one more minute as I try to see if I can go into full screen. Can you see it now?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Brilliant. Excellent. So hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining in. It's such a pleasure to speak at this event. My name is Nikesh, and Sakshi, thank you for that kind introduction. I happen to be one of those people who's lucky enough to ride this wave of podcasting where monetization is actually possible through the art form of podcasting. Podcasting has existed before for a while, actually. This is probably the third or fourth wave of podcasting, but I think this is the time period when it's actually gained a lot of traction and revenue and created stars and all that good stuff. So my responsibility today is to give you a brief outline of where things are at, why you would consider podcasting, all those sort of things. So just to give you a bit of background, as Sakshi said, I run Indian Noir podcast, which is my main podcast, which is where I write, narrate, and produce the content. The content therein are horror and crime stories. Some of them are short form, some of them are long form. And by that, what I mean is some of them are as short as one episode. It's this very short story. Some of them run up to 14 episodes, and it's more like a TV show for your mind, done through audio. And I've been very lucky enough to receive a lot of critical acclaim and a lot of blanket coverage from the media in India. So that's been really good. The readers have really, the listeners have really embraced the podcast, and there's strong word of mouth support and testimonials and ratings and reviews. And Indian Noir is available on all platforms up till its 144th episode. And there's a chart open on most of the platforms that it's on. But post 144 episodes, it's become a Spotify exclusive now going forward, where you can only listen to the future episodes in Spotify. I also have written and narrated a podcast for Wine Studio, which is a successful Indian podcast studio, which has received a lot of funding to develop content in the audio space. I wrote and narrated Heirs of the Pandavas for them, which was Bello Collective's 100 Outstanding Podcasts from 2020, which was a real honor. So I have some experience working with startups in the podcasting space. Also, I was asked by Audible Suno when they launched in India to write a horror show for them. So this is Meru, which is inspired by Indian mythology. So I was very lucky to have a piece of content to be showcased along with some of the Bollywood stars that you know and love. So I have worked for an external provider as well. And something that I haven't mentioned here is how sometimes in my professional life as well, I have to do audio content to support my work. I work as an analyst, so sometimes to explain difficult concepts or promote a certain policy initiative, I often tend to use the audio medium. So I have a broad sort of experience looking at the audio medium and podcasting, and that's why I'm speaking quite authoritatively to you about this, and hopefully take you in my confidence as I guide you through some of the things that I'm going to talk about in the next 20 to 30 minutes. So how is the ecosystem of podcasting set up? We've got the hosts, where the content is uploaded and stored and disseminated from. So you can see all these brands that are the most popular, viable ones. And then you have the free one, Anchor, which is owned by Spotify, which is excellent as well, which is what I use for Indian Noir. So there are the hosts then that form the kind of bottom level of that ecosystem. And the reason why we are even talking about these different ecosystems, I will continue on explaining what the other players are, but I think it's worthwhile talking about this. Passive consumption of content is on the rise. There is active consumption in the guise of, looking at a screen and consuming content on that front. But, what about the time when you are cleaning the kitchen or just going for a jog? There is, or when you're just sick and tired of looking at the screen, people still want to be entertained. And clearly there is a strong desire, particularly among millennials and younger generations, to consume content, and podcasts just happen to be an awesome fit for that category. And I suppose the other reason why this ecosystem has become an ecosystem is above and beyond podcasts operating like a radio program. It has become a platform to be able to showcase your talent. So in my case, I was a writer for 20 years, and publishing had gone downhill, and there wasn't a lot of room for monetization or for personal growth or winning acclaim in the print medium. So podcasts became a boon for a writer like me. So that would be the case for other people as well who want to showcase their expertise. So it resulted in it becoming an ecosystem. And an important part of the ecosystem, of course, are the streamers, the streaming services that operate in India and abroad. But specifically, let's talk about India. We've got Spotify, Apple, Ghana, JioSaavn, Audible, Wink, Hubhopper, and many, many more top players with lots of listeners, millions of listeners. India is such an amazing market for audio. But more importantly, there are players like Khabri and Headphone and Awaz who are leading the audio streaming race regionally, because I'll be completely honest with you, that's where all the big money and the big names are going to be, in the regional audio streaming space. About 40 multilingual podcast companies across various languages and genres operate at the moment, based on the last count. But this changes every day. More and more players are coming into the picture. Such an amazing space, the regional audio space. And in terms of listeners, as you can imagine, we have always been a country of listeners. We always loved our radio. We continue to love the streaming services, and now with podcasts, definitely it's really boosted the content assets the streaming services have. And according to PwC, we've got about 57.6 million monthly listeners, and this has amazingly gone up during COVID, when people would have thought, with people not traveling, it's gone down. It's actually gone up. More and more people have embraced the media. And I suppose one of the reasons is that, you can stay away from the constant assault of horrific imagery on your screens, and actually focus on other things, because there are other things happening in the world as well. And, even for COVID, it's audio is a great medium for passing on information. So there is a huge market for it. According to KPMG, the market is valued at around 176.2 million, and with a steady growth rate of 34.5 CAGR, which is excellent, which is so good in terms of a growth rate. But monetization has been a challenge for the last 2 or 3 years, and it's slowly starting to get addressed as the streaming platforms start to sign exclusivity deals with homegrown talent. So a good example is Spotify signing the deal with me. There's commissioned work that you get. So, for example, Audible, they paid me to do a certain number of episodes, and they own the rights. So there's that. Ad revenue is really a challenge, because as you can see from the example that I've given you, it's difficult to get people to pay for the streaming services, at least in these initial years. And there is the issue of advertisers not really understanding that it's not like an Instagram page where people just go past the photo and there's not much engagement. Podcasts have amazing value in terms of engagement, and people listen to the ads, but there isn't an understanding among advertisers that that's possible. But ad revenue is a challenge at the moment. Nobody's cracked that. I think the streaming services, because they've got the big numbers, they will be able to use their ad stock to generate some revenue in this space. But outside of that, it's yet to be seen whether any of the startups or the smaller Indian companies can track the ad problem with podcasting. Now, I don't want this to be a boring session with stats. So if you are interested, there is a pod industry highlight on my Instagram page. My Instagram page is at Indian Noir on Instagram. So please go there and have a look if you are really interested in the space. And my Instagram stories and highlights tend to cover a lot of the developments in the industry. In terms of what genres are interesting, entertainment is the number one reason why people switch over to it. Comedy is huge, sports is huge, news and content, discussions. But there are so many other genres that are not really addressed in terms of content. And I think as science and technology aficionados and your technical expertise, some of you could be filling the engineering space or the technical space when it comes to podcasting. So, but primarily at this point of time, people are using it for entertainment. There is still, even with all the saturation of podcasts, there's a lot of room for new people to come and seed amazing content into all these genres that you can see on your screen. Just briefly touching on, outside of the money, outside of the amazing nature of the audio medium, outside of the fame you may get or the clients you may get, I think that the greatest blessing with learning to podcast is the state of constant learning that you get to be in. And by that, what I mean is you are always doing research, you're learning, you're growing, you're scripting, you're recording. So there are all the skill sets that are associated with that. With scripting, you need to know how to structure content in a way that is not boring, that is catches people's attention and can deliver interesting content. There's lots to be learned in terms of research and marketing, especially how you're going to reach out to different kinds of audience bases, because initially only a small group will listen to you, but to really truly grow, you need to appeal to a large group. So how do you manage that? What tools do you use? What social media marketing strategies can you employ? And then there's that whole aspect of mixing, which is a whole another ball game. I will talk a bit about it in the next slide, but I think this for me is the most exciting thing about podcasting, that it marries so many domains that you can employ your mindset in terms of learning. So a growth mindset, a learning mindset is very essential and is achieved by engaging with podcasting. So let me just give you some examples, like with scripting, for example, Indian Noir, it's scripted like a movie or a TV show. So I use a 3-act structure or a 5-act structure. And so the challenge there is for me to be very good at the structural elements of storytelling, and then be able to write for the audio medium and make sure that the stories fall in that structural template, so I can create binge-worthy content. So I want people to have the experience of like watching a Netflix show where you finish an episode and you want to, what's the next? Instead, it's just done for audio. So there's lots of learnings on that front. And then, as you can see on the screen, there is the mixing side of things. So that's the image there is from Hindenburg Journalist Pro, one of the mixing softwares that I use, which I really love. This learning all the technical sides of how you can record and mix audio and bring the best out of your voice, and adding SFX to it if you're looking at a show like Indian Noir, or if you're doing an interview, how to intercut between two people. If you're recording on site, how do you do that? And again, do this all in such a way that the production value is so awesome that people don't want to switch off, especially an audience that expects high quality content now. People have been brought up in an environment where they are being, looking at content that has got great quality, VFX, sound design. Visually, they're going to expect the same thing out of the audio medium as well. So lots to learn. And I suppose the other thing I will say is that the magical ingredients that go into making a podcast, a great podcast, is also the magical ingredient that goes into making a successful professional, no matter what your area of interest is. If you're an engineer, you still need these domains. You need knowledge. You need great communication skills. You need personality to convey your ideas. You need marketing and design skills to sell your knowledge, sell your technology, sell your company. You need a learning and growth mentality to go through your career and your learning journey. And while artistic resilience sits more in the artistic space, well, surely you know from your own education and your life experiences that with your area of studies and your area of work, you will need a lot of resilience. So engaging in podcasting is also an opportunity to build on these elements. And these are some of the things that I spoke about: knowledge about how things are scripted, how it's delivered. With regards to communication skills, voice training will become an integral part of doing a podcasting, and that is so useful when you're at meetings, when you're talking to clients on the phone, when you're presenting. How to and there's one thing about our all the Indian languages is that we speak really fast, and when we then try to speak English, we try to mumble and swallow our words. So like doing a podcasting course or doing your podcast and trying to improve it will enable you to improve your voice, improve your communication, oral skills. And then, you have to convey a personality through your voice. And people might look at you and yes, that first impression is very important, but the way you speak, the way you convey your ideas through your words, that then builds on that impression, and it leaves such a lasting impact, particularly on how you make the person opposite to you feel. They will clearly remember that, and I think podcasting gives you the ability to do that, to fill the voice with the personality. So it gives you an opportunity to think about what is my personality, or what is the personality I want to convey, and then use that every time you open your mouth to say something. I think such a great tool to enable you to really create a personal brand. Designing skills, I mean, clearly, from a technical aspect, you probably won't need it as much in your work, but still, I suppose what I'm talking about there is the ability to present and sell work, even if it's to the person that you're directing who you're directly reporting to in your workplace, or in most cases, your client. I think thinking of some of the marketing and design skills that go into social media is very valuable, because we all know that we are increasingly in an era where people have less attention spans. So for you to be able to present in such a way that you grasp people's interest immediately, keep them hooked on your what you're presenting, or the ideas you have, or the work you have done, and then to be able to draw out an outcome out of it, all in a brief period of time. I think there is a lot to be learned from these cross skills. Learning and growth mentality is just what I talked about before. You know this. You've seen a generation of your seniors go through, massive transformations because of the way the economy has structured and restructured itself. Post GFC, during COVID, you are going to have, you're going to live in an economy that is going to be in flux. Your work arenas are going to be in flux, and you will need to be able to do micro-credentials, take on micro-credential courses quickly and transform your knowledge, get onto new platforms, constantly upgrade your technical skills, and a learning and growth mentality is so important for this. And, add resilience to that. That is something that is going to be truly define the winners in my generation and indeed your generation. And hopefully those are the lessons you want to pass on to the next generation. This might not be very relevant to you, but let's say some of you are considering wanting to be a professional in a podcaster, either part-time or full-time. It takes a lot of work. You have to devote 8 to 15 hours per 20 to 45-minute episode, depending on the nature of the SFX for a fiction show. But if you're doing a non-fiction show, it's probably not that taxing in terms of time. But still, this is not just a matter of getting a mic and recording things and putting it out there. People just switch off so quickly if they find that the content is not engaging, or people are just waffling on and it's unwanted. You have to be regular. You have to be consistent with the content you put out, weekly at least. Can you commit to that kind of time for production and release? These are things to consider. And then you have to constantly improve your tech, because audio technology is changing every day. And you have to get the latest plugins, the BGMs, the good quality mics, and that all costs money. So would you want to invest in that sort of thing? And are you willing to commit and do all these things over a long period of time with little or no monetary reward? So speaking about me, I had some audio ad revenue for a while. Then I got some commissioned work for a while, and then it's taken 3 years before I've signed an exclusivity deal. So it's a long period of time to commit to something like this. So you want to have realistic expectations about becoming a professional podcaster, which I still am not. I do work on this as a hobby during my spare time in the evening, and try just cumulatively build the work across the board, because I have a day job, I have a family. But still, it's fun. It gives me an artistic outlet, helps me balance myself as an individual. And because it has it's been monetized. So your idea could have the same impact too. So don't discount it. Where to next before I close off? If you are interested in finding out more, Google is the place to go for the finding out what the best podcasts are, what the best gear is to record in. They even have like cheap lists that you can just buy just if you're curious about the art form. You can get on Anchor, which is free. Just you go over a period of an year, really enjoy it for the host. And obviously listen to a lot of good podcasts to find out what genre you might be interested in. Just because you're in a technical field doesn't mean you have to restrict yourself to that. Although technical expertise helps, and that builds a relationship with your audience. YouTube is, as you would know, amazing for technical tutorials. So, for example, if you want to learn to use Hindenburg Journalist Pro, which is the software I spoke about before, which is what I use for mixing, so many videos produced by that company to get on board, spend a few hours and learn what to do. Go to Pod News for latest news on the industry. It is the industry standard for news. And even if you're not interested in starting a podcast immediately, if you just want to suss out what the field is like, what the acquisitions are like, what the tech is like in that field, go to Pod News, go to their website or Twitter, which is very popular. And then do specialist courses or one-on-one consulting. A lot of them are free, but if you're really serious and if you really want to hone your plan, particularly because it's a thing that takes a lot of time, look for a podcast consultant who will be able to help you think about the content, narrow the idea, give it a good title, think about things like SEO when it comes to your podcast listing and transcripts and show notes, the frequency, which streaming platform you should be on. So a lot of time can be saved if you engage a professional. So that's very useful. And lastly, I am on www.indianoir.com, and the most popular social media platform that I am on is Instagram. I'm on Twitter as well, but follow me on @Indianoir on Instagram. And I wish you all the best, and I hope I haven't spoken non-stop and bored you, but I think I will be willing to take some questions now, which is always the most interesting part, let's be honest about these things. So yeah, if you've got any questions, please, happy to answer.
Okay, so we have some questions from the live audience from YouTube. So
Sure.
I'll just, yes, so if you could, just a second. Yeah. If you could give advice to your 16-year-old self, what would it be?
Don't listen to your parents. They don't know anything. I mean, unless I said it this morning, like particularly career advice. Parents are the worst people to take career advice from. So unless they are successful in their own field and they really know what working in an area is like, don't take any advice from them. Try to get advice from people who are actually HR professionals who actually work in a field. Get a realistic understanding of what that field is like. And this is not, shouldn't be surprising in India, where we make a call on career as early as when we are 16 years of age. So it's very important to make this call very early on, particularly in the kind of economy that you as young people are going to go into. It's going to be an economy that will constantly transform. It's going to demand a lot out of you in terms of what you need to learn, what you need to do, the areas that you will be working in. You are not going to be like your parents stuck in the same job for 60 years. That's definitely not my case. So that's definitely not going to be your case. And like a world of opportunity to do different things, awesome things await us, really productive things. So I think that, I wasted a lot of years learning things that other people wanted, which was just such a waste of time. And eventually I ended up learning the things I wanted. But, you lose so many years trying to pursue that for other people. So that would be my advice.
Okay, so the next question is by Gitel Panwar. She has asked, we have noticed you usually release your stories in parts spanning over weeks. What exactly goes on in the back end during that time?
Thanks for the question, Gitel. So what usually happens is that over a week, I write across a few days, and writing is the most difficult part. Usually the scripts are anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 words. I obviously have to rewrite it and then do a final edit, and polish it to make sure that it's actually a good story. Then I narrate it, and then I have to cut and mix and produce the episode. So that's the gap, and that usually takes anywhere from 8 to 12 hours over a week to do that, and that's usually done at night, close to like just before midnight for an hour. I spend some time every day doing it. So I try to do it in bits and pieces, so it's not overwhelming. Hence the thing. But the other benefit of that is my intention was always to release stories as a serial, because when I was a kid, I'm sure all of us in some capacity enjoyed this with comics, but I used to watch my older cousins like eagerly wait for these magazines, which were black and white, which were serials. So they were the same thing as Indian Noir. Like there'd be a story, there'd be a bit of it, you'd read that, and then you have to wait for a week to find out what happened next. And there's always a thrill that came with it, which is so different to like the immediate gratification that you get from binging. I wanted people to experience that, because I am experiencing that with you as I'm writing the stories as well. And I think it really adds value, because regardless of whether it's a horror or a crime story, it's Indian Noir stories are in a thriller format. So the waiting, I think, enhances the pleasure. Yeah, so I think that's the reason for the gap.
Okay, so the next question is by Dhruvil Nakum. He has asked, sir, what is the biggest challenge you have with your specific role right now? And how are you planning to, how are you going to overcome it?
Yeah, I'll specifically speak about podcasting because that's what I'm here for. I think the big challenge at this very moment is making sure that everyone who was listening to Indian Noir will switch over on other platforms, will switch over to Spotify. This is one of the big challenges of our era. People are so reluctant even to download another app, because the attention span's like 4 seconds. Nobody wants to spend more time than that to be able to do something else. So to get them to download Spotify, get on and find Indian Noir and follow them is the biggest challenge. So all I can do is try and speak about it through social media, hope that other avid listeners will ask other listeners to do that, and leave some messages in the previous episodes asking people to do that. So that's what needs to be cracked now. But I trust that the core audience, which really loves it, will always move with it. It's probably the casual listeners who will fall off, which I don't want to happen. I want them to come along as well, because there's so many great stories that I want to tell that are coming up ahead.
Okay, this question is from my end. So I was during this COVID tenure, we always see, not tenure, like this COVID situation, we see a lot of people building positive content and positive outlooks towards life and all. So in that scenario, this work, I got attracted. I would say I am someone who consumes this only rather than something which is positive. But on a larger scale, a bit of horror, then the dark fantasy side. So how do we deal with that? How did you deal with that?
Yeah. So I just my basic philosophy with Indian Noir is that it's good to be positive, but it's foolish to think that life is without negativity and darker aspects. You cannot live in a society like that. That is just being naive. And people who live like that, I find that often end up having a crisis and they just can't handle themselves. And this is particularly in a country like India, where we don't have the social security support systems that a lot of Western countries have. We are often left to our own devices. And we saw this during the COVID crisis. People have had to rely on their resilience, themselves, their friends, their family to do this. So I think it's important to engage with the darker aspects of life because it's part of you. I think it's very fashionable in the woke era to think that everyone's, virtuous and wonderful. Nobody makes any mistakes. And the person who makes one mistake has only done that. That's not true at all. Like you and I, we are all monsters in one way or form, but we have nice things too. You see the same kind of stupidity in romance stories where, you find someone, oh, I found that girl or the husband. I love him so much. No, really, you're actually finding someone monstrous and choosing to love them because you see the good qualities in them. And hopefully in that love, some of that monstrosity dissipates and they become better as they journey with you So that's a more realistic perspective on life. It'd be foolish to think that nobody would, like go through life making any mistakes or don't have darker elements in them. So horror and crime are ways to engage with this aspects. Crime, I think, looks at it from a macro perspective. It looks at society. When someone's murdered, really, when drugs is an issue, really what's happening there is it's indicating there's something wrong with the societal constructs. So let's take, for example, violence against women in India. The broader issue there is misogyny in society, is the lack of infrastructure and the judicial support and law enforcement help to prevent these at the scale that we need to address these issues, and education to change these attitudes. So crime tells a broader story about the disease in society. Horror tells the disease on a personal level. So, for example, the flagship show on Indian Noir is Fear FM. The first season, it talks about a man who has lost his job, is depressed, has to come home and take care of his mother who's sick, who doesn't really like. I mean, people don't really talk about this, but there are plenty of children who don't like looking after their parents. It's such an unsaid, nobody discusses this. It becomes harder as you grow older, when you yourself are depressed and not capable of looking after yourself. So, like that story, even though it's about a demon that is haunting them, really the real horror is the human condition. So the second season of Fear FM is what happens to friendships as you grow into adulthood. And I mean, you're probably at the age where you still say to your friends, "We're gonna be best friends forever." Like that just changes so much once you go into your mid-30s and mid-40s, and you start having commitments, and these friendships start dissipating, and then suddenly you really look around you and it's almost like you have no one. And just months ago you were hanging out with so many people. And so also what happens between people over a long period of time, your relationships with your friends will change. You will hurt each other, you'll betray each other, you will see things in the other person that you didn't see in the beginning, that you now hate. And so that is the real horror. The human condition is the horror there. But again, in that story, there is a demonic entity, so which then gives you that external plot to re-examine this. So I would say during periods like COVID, and I can give you a bit of a heads up with Duma Beach, the story that's ongoing with Indian Noir at the moment, or exclusively on Spotify. COVID will become an area of focus. It really is about, because there is references to that in the first episode. It is a way for me to relive that trauma as well, even though I wasn't directly affected. I'm seeing it happen around me. I spoke to a journalist in Delhi yesterday, and they said that they've only shown 10% of the footage that they actually captured. They have seen hours and hours of footages of mass graves and people dying on the streets. They have to process this trauma, and there is no escaping this in life. It is foolish to think that anyone will go forward. And if it's not this pandemic, it'll be something else. Someone will die in your lives. Disease will affect you. You might have an accident. You will lose a loved one. You will lose a job. All these things will happen to you. So having grit and having resilience is a very important part of growing. And stories have always, especially oral storytelling that was told around a fire in a tribal community, was a way to help people process these fears so that they can go and they can quest and they can achieve amazing things. And you're all at that age, at the point where you can go and quest and do amazing things, knowing that it's going to be stressful. It's going to be hard. I think Professor Scott Galloway, who runs, I think, it's the best podcast on earth, it's Professor G Show, he wrote about this. He said that, when he was doing his graduation speech, his mother was waving at him, people were happy. And he knew at that moment that, he got to that point with very little difficulty, really. And what he had to look forward to the next 30, 40 years as he became a worker, husband, carer to his parents, was years of stress. And he said that everything good in life involves stress. So positivity is good. You need that. You absolutely need that. You just can't be dour all the time. But the positive stories need to be about people who have overcome something difficult. not people who are on, Instagram all the time. Oh, look, I have a husband. What an awesome time we are having on the beach. Oh, look, I'm always at this party. No, you are not. You are not happy there. I can clearly see in the photo you're not happy. You're just putting this bullshit on so that you can feel better about it. No, other people are at parties too. They might feel bad during some points in the party. They might feel good during the party. But your single most positive, definitive image of that event is not the truth. Truth is complicated. People are complicated. So I suppose that's what we're trying to do with darker storytelling.
Hello, sir. I have a question that I'd like to ask.
Sure, Harip.
So, like, now that you said, we look around and we find a lot of things that we can, make content out of. We never personally do experience demonic entities. So how do you get a normal situation, a day-to-day life situation, to turn into a horror story and make it so engaging for the audience to listen to?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. That is a great question. I think two aspects to it. I mean, for the first part, it's quite easy in that you only have to look around to get a theme for a story. So like Dumas Beach, which is running now, which has had its first part out. It's about betrayals in relationships, particularly people who might not have anyone else to lean on. What happens to these people when the one person you depend on betrays you? This is a common theme. We see this around us all the time, so that was easy. It's just looking around to spot that. The second aspect is not easy, which is knowing how a story is structured. So as I said in my presentation, I used like a 3-act structure that's used for a movie. So specifically horror movies. So Fear FM is written like a horror movie, whereas His Night Begins is written more like a TV show. It's got a 5-act structure. That takes years of learning and practicing to write in those structures to be able to do that. And that comes with a lot of experience. So the skill, I suppose, which is why I'm getting paid for, is learning to put that easy bit into the hard bit and then to produce it in such a way that it's an engaging story. But I think like it is so crucial. That's the thing that makes people really engaged with the story. I'll take horror in particular. Like, it's not enough to just have some scary scenes and some monsters. It's important that people care for the person that the terrible things are happening to.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we have one more question.
Sure.
What makes you feel inspired or like your best self?
Inspired, I think. I think I found my calling in telling stories. A lot of people don't get to find that through their lifetime. I was unable, fortunately, for 2 decades, not able to find a medium that I could use to tell these stories. That was the great difficulty in my life. But now I have that in the form of podcasting, and I feel very blessed and grateful that I can do that. Just being able to practice my art makes me feel like my best self is the answer. So I hope that answered that question.
Okay, and this is the last question.
Sure.
So who has been your biggest supporter, mentor, role model over the course of your career, as far as podcast is concerned?
Yeah, look, it's mentoring is a very interesting thing. I don't know what your situation is like as young people, but I have really struggled to find mentors past the age of 22, which speaks to the sad state of our society. I would like to think that things are a bit different in India, but definitely was not the case in the West when I moved here. When in my 20s, I really struggled to find mentors, people who would give some time to advise me on careers and things like that. But when I was a teenager or closer to your age, I had other seniors that I looked up to who were doing great things in terms of developing their communication skills and personality, who really inspired. Post that, what's happened is I have had to, and this is where internet's been such a great blessing. You can consume all these books and videos and articles and content and get digital mentoring without hassling these people. But I've never let that be the sole experience of mentoring. I've tried to reach out to people, and not many people do mentor people. Now, there is the time constraint these days as well. People are so busy, so you cannot blame people for not having the time. So I suppose what I try to do in my personal life is now, when I see people who are new podcasters, I don't wait for them to ask me any questions. I go and give them words of encouragement. That's a way to support people, even though I might not be able to really mentor. But in the podcasting space, I would say the way to do that is to pay a consultant to help you do that. And that's the way to do it. But it's becoming very difficult to find mentors, even though there are so many mentoring programs around. I think it's a lost skill. Hopefully, when I'm old, I can spend a lot of time mentoring other people, like really old. But yeah, so but I'm very thankful for all the listeners. They've always been the number one driver. Some of the streaming services in India have excellent staff members who are very, very generous with their time when it comes to dealing with new podcasters. So speaking to them has been awesome. And that's one of the reasons why I'm working with Spotify now, because they have such an awesome team. But across the board, JioSav and Audioboom, and they were around, incredible people. So, you do have those people to bounce up against. And when you start podcasting, it's a community, and it's a community of producers and listeners. You can bounce ideas off them and get their feedback, and it's very valuable.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. And I would just say, as far as I'm concerned, I am someone who have completed all the. I won't say I'm guilty, but I'm more like, okay, I've completed His Night Begins, then Fear FM, both the episodes, and I can see the story like that.
Good.
So,
Good.
so that is what it impacts on me.
Very good.
Okay.
I'm so happy, and that's what I want to achieve as well. I essentially want to produce in audio all the horror and crime TV shows and movies featuring Indians set in India that studios just won't produce because of budgetary constraint, or they don't have the interest, or because Bollywood stars are not interested. I want to be able to make that in audio so that I can primarily enjoy it, and people who are like me can enjoy that too. So great to know that you are such a person too, Sakshi. You are a kindred soul.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Stories create community, enables us to see through the eyes of other people, and open us to claims of others. What better way to conclude our last session? I would like to call upon Prabdeep Singh Gatora, Vice Chairperson of ISPS Joint Chapter IEEE GSET-SB, to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you to our speaker today, Mr. Nikesh Murali, for his enlightening and knowledgeable words. Thank you to all our participants for joining us today. Your enthusiasm is so inspiring in such a way that we all may never stop trying to learn. A special thanks to the host for establishing a good medium between our speaker and our participants. I, Prabdeep Singh Gatora, Vice Chairperson of IEEE IAS Joint Chapter IEEE GZSB, sincerely would like to thank Dr. Himanshu Soni, the Principal of G.H. Patel College of Engineering and Technology, Dr. Hardik Pathak sir, for constant support, and the entire organizing committee to make this event possible. I would also like to thank all our participants for attending this event, staying with us, and making this event a grand success. Once again, thank you so much to each and everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy. Hope to see you soon.
Sir, we want to take a proper screenshot with our entire team. So, just like everyone, please turn on their cameras and just smile. Just a second. Yeah, okay. One more, last. Yeah, okay. It's done. Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And please take care of your health and stay safe during COVID. We have an outbreak in Sydney now, so we might be going into a mini lockdown to control it. But please take care of your health and wear a mask. And it's amazing to see your beautiful faces, and just amazing to engage with young people who I am sure are going to accomplish so many great things, and continue listening to India Noir. And at India Noir is the most popular social media channel for India Noir. So I'll see you there.
Yes, sir.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Sir.
Bye.
The participants are requested to fill the feedback form if they haven't done so.